Hello, my name is Jacob Zhang, and it is our pleasure to have the honor of inviting our guest speaker, Ms. Jeanne-Marie Paynel, to honor this special Covered Bridge Montessori School Parent Education event. Ms. Jeanne-Marie Paynel is a parenting mentor and home consultant. She helps parents let go of the overwhelm so they can enjoy raising self-sufficient and resilient children with ease. She's the host of the Art of Parenting podcast and founder of Your Parenting Mentor, where she guides expectant parents and caregivers on how to better prepare their homes and themselves for their children to thrive during the first years of life. She believes that a supportive and peaceful atmosphere at home will allow every child to grow up as an independent, confident, and capable learner. She combines her three passions: Montessori, conscious parenting, and positive discipline. Her mission is to help parents appreciate the true importance of their role, not as servants or teachers, but as supporters and guides of their children's natural development. Today, she will be sharing with us a brief overview of positive discipline and how it goes hand in hand with Montessori. Without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Jeanne-Marie Paynel to join our parent education session.
I am going to share my screen. I have prepared a presentation for you, and let's get started. This presentation I titled Creating Healthy Lifelong Connections with Our Children, because I think ultimately that is what we want, is to have a good relationship with our children, good connections, and so forth. And so today, first, I would like to introduce myself, even though that has already been done, but I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So hello, I am Jeanne-Marie Paynel, your host, and I am the proud parent of two young adults who are now following their passions far from home. So newly empty nester, which is a whole other chapter in parenting. I am a trained Montessori guide, birth to six, with a master's in Montessori education, the founder of Your Parenting Mentor, which I really created to support and encourage and empower parents of young children. Because as I trained as a Montessorian kind of later in life, because I did a big career change, I realized that this was really invaluable information, that parents weren't getting this information, right? The trained adults that are working with your children know a lot, and I feel like this is all information that should be shared with parents. And I am an author and speaker and the host, as was mentioned, of the Art of Parenting podcast, which I invite you to subscribe to. This is a weekly podcast episode where I share, all sorts of tidbits about parenting, but I also have wonderful guests that share their knowledge. And again, this is for me a way to, encourage you and empower you to be knowledgeable. I am a parenting mentor. That's what I do privately, and also in my digital course called the Parenting School. I'm also a home and school Montessori consultant, meaning that I help families create, quote unquote Montessori environments in their home. And I've helped establish schools all over the world. And that is something that I'm very passionate about, is the environment that we create. I'm also a positive discipline parent and classroom educator, and we're going to be talking quite a bit about positive discipline today, because I think it is something that really goes beautifully hand in hand with Montessori. And I'm also the creator of the Parenting School, which I will share a little bit at the end of this presentation.
All right.
So today, what we will cover together is a very brief overview of Montessori in general, and then how we can incorporate it at home. Also about positive discipline, what is not positive discipline and what is positive discipline. I will also invite you to contemplate what is your parenting style and kind of share with you what is the sweet spot for me in how we parent. We'll talk about how to establish routines at home, as well as an important tool that I think is the family meetings. So we'll be talking about that. And I will also share how to recover from our mistakes, because let's not fool ourselves. We are humans, we make mistakes. And what is important is to learn from our mistakes. So how to recover from them. And then a word about encouragement. And I have a few tips to remember. And then finally, how to get more support. So let's get started with what is Montessori. So Montessori for me is really an education as an aid to life. And this is a beautiful quote that expresses that by Dr. Montessori, which is, the word education must not be understood in the sense of teaching, but of assisting the psychological development of the child. So Montessori education to me is really about the whole child, right? It is academics, but it's also about that personality development. And contrary to more traditional schools, and I'm assuming that all the parents on the call did this, deliberately, of choosing a Montessori school because it is child driven, because we know that children come to us curious, eager to learn, and ready to adapt to their time, place, and culture. And that is the beauty of the Montessori education, is that it is really respectful of the individual child. The other very important thing to note about Montessori education is this notion of the prepared environment. So if you've seen in your school setting, depending on the age group, the environments have a very different look and feel, because we are really responding to our children's specific needs during those developmental windows. The next thing is, and this is what we'll talk a bit more about, this is this notion of freedom within limits. And I emphasize within limits because I think there is a misconception sometimes about Montessori education that, oh yeah, it's that school where, children get to do whatever they want. But we all know, all the trained Montessorians on the call, is that the way that we set up that prepared environment is already a way of giving limits and a response to the child, right? And that there are certain rules and regulation about how we interact with each other, how we interact with the material. So there are limits that we emphasize on that, but it is freedom within those boundaries, right? They are free to choose the work that they want, as long as they have had a lesson, as long as they're, handling it properly, and so on and so forth. The other important aspect of Montessori is this sense of order. So there's a sense of visual order. The prepared environment, as I mentioned, is prepared in a very sequential way. There is a sequence to the presentation, but there's also a very conscientious way of putting things from left to right, which is an indirect preparation to reading and writing. So it's very intentional, this sense of order, and also the routines and the rituals and the rhythm of the day is part of that order, because we know that children, especially young children, are very sensitive to order. So we have prepared our environment to reflect that. Montessori also is classrooms that are mixed ages, which is really a beautiful way to have socialization. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to just hang out with people my age. Like I really enjoy being with younger and older and children, teenagers, my elders and such. And that's how I learn. That is how I, am able to interact with people. So in more traditional schools, we tend to have this, birthday cutoff, that, isolates children with only their peers of a certain age group. So here, the mixed age group is really for their development, for their social development. The next thing is, before 6 years of age in the Montessori curriculum, we tend to be reality based, so very concrete, no fantasies and fairy tales and such, contrary to maybe if we were in a Waldorf school, which tends to be more, in tune with kind of fanciful stories and such. So Montessori knows that the child wants concrete information at a young age, and so we really give them that very early on. Now, the next thing is this notion of freedom of movement. So we talked about freedom within limits. This is different in that children are able to choose where they're going to work. Do they want to sit at a table, or do they want to get a work rug out and sit on the floor? When I was in the classroom, I had this beautiful indoor-outdoor environment. They could go and work outside as well. Again, contrary to what a lot of us might have known in the traditional schools, is where we had to sit still at a desk pretty much all day. And to ask a young child to sit still is pretty much torture. So freedom of movement is very important. And then lastly, two last thing is this notion of uninterrupted work cycles. And this is this notion that we have a window where we are letting our children have a freedom of choice of what they're working on. And then really this freedom to be able to repeat as many times as they want, because we know that it is through repetition that we learn. And so we're not interrupting our children by, saying, oh, it's time to clean up and now it's math time, or you have to go to music or whatever. We have these windows of work cycles where they are able to choose their work, maybe choose another one, maybe the guide is giving them a presentation. But this is, to me, very important, is to really let the child be in their flow, right? And then lastly, we have trained adults. So we have adults who understand the material, who understand what are human tendencies and planes of development and sensitive periods and all of these, Montessori terms, and how to apply them to your children. So that is, to me, very important, to have knowledgeable adults in the environment. And then lastly, we know that Montessori is really an education, like I say, an education as an aid to life that starts at birth, even conception. I work with parents while they are expecting through to university. So really there are environments for children from birth through adolescence in the Montessori environments. So then how do we, help support and bridge the child's school experience with home, so that really we have the best experience in both? And I'm, really adamant about this, because having been in the Montessori classroom and having worked with children, I really, really saw a huge difference in the children that were given opportunities at home to continue having this independence and to continue showing us how capable they are. And those whose families were maybe still, wanting to do everything for them and everything, I saw very frustrated children. So this is really, to me, important to have a few of these principles come into the home. So for example, what does that mean at home? For me, it means about creating a yes space. So a home where you have intentionally adapted it for your child's developmental needs, just like the prepared environments in Montessori, right? And this is going to take stress off of you, the parent, because you're not going to be in this situation where you're, oh my gosh, no, don't touch that. No, don't touch that. And you've adapted the environment for their needs. And rest assured, this is temporary. This is just a, small window in your life and in the life of your child in your home, right? Especially those first 6 years, the environment is going to evolve pretty much every month or so, at least those first 3 years. But then it's really about incorporating them, right? Because this is their home as well. So how can we really make them feel like this is their place to be and that they can do things, that we're in a yes environment, right? As opposed to always saying no. So important, and that's part of preparing that environment. Then the other aspect is when I said freedom within limits, this is where I bring in positive discipline into the home. And this is what I'm going to focus most of the presentation on, is what is not positive discipline and what it is, and give you some tools. The other thing in the home is also this sense of order and routines. And this is going to help you to be punctual, to, get to school on time, to have skills that is going to help your child be able to take care of their needs and to really be able to have that sense of order, which again is very important to them at a young age. Having a joyful family life, right? This is part of being home, is how to really have that family life. And this I say because I have too often seen families who kind of want to reproduce the Montessori environment at home. And here, I really say don't. You don't need, if your child is in a Montessori school, you don't need to have Montessori materials at home or anything. I remember a dad, I had this young boy who was, fascinated with all the math material in the primary classroom, and the father wanted to buy all the material for him. And I said, please, no, because this will take away that enthusiasm for the child to go to school and work on the material that they are interested in. So this is more about creating a family life and having those connections and so forth. We also tend to stay reality-based. And why I put this here is also to talk a little bit about screen time. I'm a big advocate for very limited screen time. When I say limited, I even say 0, if at all possible, until much later when they're needing a computer to do some research and things like that. But there is really no benefit whatsoever to have screen distractions. Please don't hand over your phone and, waste money buying iPads and all of that. If you want to watch something, watch it together, make it a family time together so you can talk about it, so you can interact about it. And most importantly, screen time, please avoid it no matter what in the morning before dropping your children off at school. And this I have seen myself from the children, and I could really tell those who, maybe had breakfast with the TV on, or maybe the TV on in the car. They really were had a much harder time concentrating when they first got to school, and they were kind of in this fanciful world and such. So that's why I put this here. Reality-based is really limiting our screen time with young children. Now, the other thing in the home is to really give them the sense of independence and being able to do things for themselves. That's what they're doing in the Montessori classroom, right? They're preparing their own food. They're taking care of their personal needs. They're helping each other. They're taking care of the environment. So they need to be able to do the same thing at home. And to do that, well, we need to make, proper child-sized stools accessible to them. We need to have them share some of the load, some of the chores, some of the food preparation and all of that. And for that to happen, we need to give them proper tools and have access to them. The other thing is this idea of protecting concentration. So in the classroom, it's that uninterrupted work cycle. At home, it's really the protection of concentration. So please, when you see your child doing something, whether you understand it or not, to not interrupt, not even, oh, what are you doing? Or, oh, that looks nice. Like, try to hold your tongue until you see them come out of their flow. When you see them kind of get out of that concentration, then you can interact with them and ask them, what it is that they were doing and how they enjoyed it and such for. And then, of course, we need loving, respectful adults in our homes, just like we need trained adults in the Montessori classroom. And I emphasize on respectful in the sense that children are adults in the making, and that we need to, show them respect for who they are developing into. And then again, at home, we will have them from birth to university, and then we'll be an empty nester like I am. So now let's talk a little bit about discipline. And again, if any parent has questions, please, you can put them in the chat. I will be back on screen and answer all of your questions at the end of my presentation. I know Karen is organizing the questions as well. So if you do have questions, drop them in the chat and we can get to them at the end of this presentation. So what is discipline? Discipline, I think we often think of it in a negative term, that it is, forcing or coercing a child to do something. But we have to remember that discipline actually comes from the Latin word discipulus, which actually means the follower of truth. So it's really about teaching, about guiding. And Dr. Montessori talks to us about this in this quote where she says, "Let us remember that inner discipline is something to come and not something already present. Our task is to show the way to discipline. And our task as educators and as parents that is our task, is to guide them to that inner discipline, right? So let's take a little break. If all of you would please, if you are multitasking, please come back to me. This is something important that I want us all to do together. So this is a little interactive activity, and I'm not able to see all of you, so please do pay attention. So first of all, let's put both hands on our knees. Let's hands free, stop taking notes, or if you're doing something else, just take a nice deep breath. Take a nice deep breath, exhale. And now I would like you to make a circle with your thumb and index, like an OK sign. And now I would like you to put that OK sign on your chin. I said chin. So I'm not able to see everybody, but most often when I do this in a group of people, everybody has that OK sign on their cheek and not their chin. And this is a perfect example of what mirror neurons are. This is this notion that children and most of us will do as we see done, not as we're told, not as we say, but as we do. So this is, to me, very, very important in understanding the importance of what we model, how we interact with other people, how we interact with other children, what we are modeling. Because remember that the child is absorbing everything. right? Everything, the good, the bad, everything. They are even absorbing our, our biases, our prejudices, our emotions. They are sponges. So remember, do as I say, not as I do as I do, not as I say. So, okay. So what is positive discipline? What is not positive discipline? And this I really want to bring home because, like I said, I think discipline often gets misunderstood. And positive discipline comes from Adlerian psychology, which Alfred Adler was actually a contemporary of Dr. Montessori. And it was then adapted by Jane Nelson, who is the author of the Positive Discipline book series, which I highly, highly recommend. The first one, just Positive Discipline, is a great place to start. And then she went on to do many, write many different books for different age groups, for different situations. And now Positive Discipline has been adapted for the workplace, for relationships, and so forth. So it is really a beautiful way to interact together. So I just have a few slides to emphasize on what positive discipline is not first. So positive discipline is not about punishment, right? Punishment gets in the way of children really learning. It only creates negative feelings about oneself. It creates what we call the 4 R's, which is rebellion, revenge, retreat, or resentment. It really makes the child feel this sense of low self-esteem. I must be a bad person. So we're doing away with punishment. And positive discipline is not about permissiveness, because permissiveness is the other extreme, where the child, believes that love means getting other people to do things, to take care of me and give me everything I want, or maybe feeling I'm not capable and I can't survive disappointment, right? So we need to be careful not to go to that extreme of permissiveness. Now, positive discipline is not about rewards and praise. And I know this one is a little bit hard because, I think it's very kind of instinctual for us to want to praise and reward our children for, quote unquote, good behavior. But here we are wanting to be careful with that, because it's letting the child know that I need external rewards to feel good about myself, right? And it's what I call creating reward junkies, where children are not doing things because it feels good intrinsically, but they're doing it to get something. And we need to be very careful with that, because also once you start, you'll start a little bit and then it just gets more and more, because they're super smart and they will milk it for as long as they can. So being careful of that. And also in this is really being careful to stop using this good job to good job at just about everything. Because again, this is, and I know this is hard, because I think we just say it naturally and we're just, we're excited. But again, this is just giving them that external praise, when it's more about helping them see the process that they went through, right? It's about, oh my gosh, that looked really hard and you were able to do it, right? So really going a little deeper than just this surface good job that kind of, brushes it off, to be very intentional about how you are encouraging the children. So I think that now that I've mentioned it, you might notice it a bit more, because I think once we become aware, we notice how often we say it, or we hear all these other people saying it as well. So it's better to say nothing, or to say what you saw, to just be descriptive, and really to talk less and ask more. And a great book on this is Punishment by Rewards by Alfie Kohn, if you're interested in reading more about this notion of avoiding this idea of rewards and praise. Now, the other thing that positive discipline is not, it's this notion of pampering or rescuing. So again, this goes back to, the child thinking I'm not capable of doing things myself, right? And this is really hard because one of the two psychological legs that we stand on for a healthy personality is first trust in the world, which we give children from the time they are born. And then later on, when they start being able to do things for themselves, is trust in oneself. So when we are constantly rescuing them and doing things for them, well, they never get to develop that sense of, I can trust myself, right? I'm capable, I can do things. So letting them make mistakes. And this might be, I don't know, for example, you have a child who's responsible for getting their lunchbox in the morning and they forget it. Well, are you going to rescue the situation and drive back to the home to come back and drop it off? Or are you going to let the child deal with this unfortunate situation? And the school's not going to let them starve. There's food, there's snack food, there's other things, and that's the way that the child is going to learn. So that might sound like a little bit of an extreme, but honestly, this is how they're going to learn, right? So to stop rescuing them and pampering them from these experiences. Now, the next thing positive discipline is this idea of punitive timeout. So I do emphasize on the word punitive because we often use this notion of timeout where you've made a mistake, you've been, bad, quote unquote, go to your room, go in the corner, think about how bad you are, think about your actions. And that really doesn't encourage them to find solutions or be better. I mean, I remember being told to, go to your room, you are in the doghouse. That was my mother's way of telling me that I was in big trouble and I needed to go, think about how awful I was. So instead, we're going to learn to create a positive timeout space in our homes, teaching to be able to teach our children to self-regulate and to develop their emotional intelligence, right? Because if we just put them away and tell them to go in timeout, they never get to find solutions and learn from their mistakes. So let's do away with this idea of punitive timeout and think about how we can do a positive timeout space for us to self-regulate. Then we have this idea of not taking privileges away. And so here, this is a little bit kind of a fine line because I think oftentimes we use this as maybe thinking that this is a logical consequence. And sometimes there is no logic whatsoever in the privilege that we're taking away, right? Maybe it's about, if you don't finish what's on your plate, we're not going to the park tomorrow. Like, what does that have to do with it, right? Maybe the child is just not hungry. Maybe they don't like broccoli. And you need to go to the park. We need time outside and movement and so forth. So it's not logical, right? It's very different than what I call natural consequences, which is you forgot your lunchbox. Well, you're going to have to, ask the teacher if there's some extra snack or, maybe see if, I don't know, you can do a takeout or something, right? You're going to have to come up with solutions. That is a natural consequence. That is something that happens. Or, you don't want to put on your rain boots and you're stuck on wanting to put your sandals. Well, your feet are going to be wet and that's a natural consequence. as opposed to taking something away from them. And then lastly, positive discipline is never about shame, blame, or pain. Never, ever, ever. Positive discipline is about firmness and kindness so that children feel safe and respected, not afraid, not spoiled, just respected. And eventually do not spend decades repairing the trauma that was inflicted by shaming them or blaming them or inflicting pain. And there is this quote that I love that is an author unknown. It is, and he says, or she says, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So that is all that positive discipline is not. And this is a quick recap of what positive discipline is not. It's not about punishment or permissiveness, reward or praise, pampering or rescuing, punitive timeout, taking privileges away, shame, blame, or pain, right? It's not about humiliation or lack of respect for another human being. And this is important to note because if we are in the mindset of knowing that when a child is quote unquote misbehaving, it means that they are discouraged, because positive discipline is really based in this notion that you and I and everybody on this call, all we want is significance and belonging. And that when we don't have it, well, we're discouraged. And a child doesn't yet have the vocabulary, the wherewithal, the emotional intelligence to be aware of what they're missing out on. So they misbehave, they have a meltdown, they have a tantrum, they have a fit, depending on their age, they're going to react differently to this feeling of discouragement. And this quote is from Rudolf Dreikes, who was an associate of Alfred Adler, who continued a lot of his work and actually formed the North American Society for Adlerian Psychology that is still active today. And I just love this quote because it is a wonderful reminder of what behavior is, right? Behavior is a form of communication. All righty, so let's take a little pause here and talk about your parenting style. Okay, so let us consider that we are on a quadrant of kindness and firmness, right? You're either very kind or not so kind, very firm or not so firm. And where do you fit in this quadrant, right? Are you very kind and not so firm, and therefore you are what we consider a permissive parent, which is freedom without any boundaries, right? At the beginning, I talked about this notion of freedom within limits. This is freedom without boundaries. This is do as you like. But unfortunately, this is very, very hard for a child. This is overwhelming because they're brand new to this planet. They don't know the rules and regulations, and they need to. They want to do good. A child comes to us wanting to do well, to please us, and such, right? And so they need guidance. And so when there are no boundaries, it's almost overwhelming because they don't know how to properly interact in the world. Now, in the lower quadrant, if we have no firmness, no kindness, then we are an uninvolved parent, neglectful parent, which I doubt any of you that are on the call fit in this quadrant, because if you were, not interested, you wouldn't be here. But this is the neglectful parent, and sometimes, those are families that need help, that need our support. There might be, other things going on. Then on the lower one, we have this notion of a lot of firmness and not so much kindness. And so this is what we call the authoritarian parent. This is the parent that has a lot of boundaries without any freedom. So this is more like the dictator that is really, it's my way or the highway. And, if you don't behave, I'm going to send you off to military school or whatever. It's that very strict family. And here, I just want you to be aware that we all kind of fluctuate sometimes from one quadrant to the other, because there is no perfect parent, right? There is no perfect way of being. And sometimes, our buttons get pushed where we are a bit more permissive because we're tired and we don't want to deal with it, or we are really fed up and we become more on that authoritarian quadrant. So we do, fluctuate. But what here, the sweet spot for me is being in between this firmness and kindness. So to be firm and kind at the same time, this is the sweet spot of parenting. And this is the freedom within boundaries. This is where we are able to really guide our child with respect. We are firm because we are respecting the situation. We are respecting ourselves, and we are kind because we are respecting the child, the adult in the making. And this is a beautiful quote from Dr. Montessori that reminds us about this. And to let a child do as he likes when he has not yet developed any powers of control is to betray the idea of freedom. And this is a direct quote. It's a lot of he and not, yet inclusive language 100 and some years ago. And I'll read it again because to me, this is so, so important and to drive home. And this is to let a child do as he likes when he has not yet developed any powers of control is to betray the idea of freedom. So now that I've told you what positive discipline is not, let's talk about what it is. So what is positive discipline? So as I mentioned, it is based in Adlerian psychology, which is this notion that we all strive to have significance and belonging, right? But you will know that you are stepping in the right direction when you ask yourself these questions. Is it kind and firm at the same time, right? Is it, am I being respectful of the child? Am I being respectful of the situation? It's really, I love you. And the answer is no. And for me, the magic words, the two magic words with this is and. So I see that you're very upset and you don't want to stop playing, and it's time to clean up. It's not but, it's and. And then also the I messages. It's about using I messages as opposed of saying you can't do something, right? You can't throw that. No, it's more about you're the one setting the boundaries. So I cannot let you do that. I need to keep everybody safe, and I cannot let you do that. So if you throw that again, I'm going to take it away. That's it, right? It's being firm and kind. I love you, and I cannot let you do that. The next one is, does it give children a sense of belonging and significance? So this is really that love and responsibility, right? The belonging is feeling love, being part of a community, and the significance is having responsibility. I know for me, when I was in the classroom, the quote unquote, the difficult children or those who were needing more attention than others always became my best little helpers, because once you give them a sense of responsibility, they're fine, right? They need work. And we talk about this in Montessori when we talk about, a normalized child. And a normalized child is a child who has work that they have freely chosen, that they're able to concentrate, and they're content, they're happy. So very important to make sure that we give them that sense of belonging and significance. And also we ask ourselves, is it effective long-term, right? Positive discipline tools are effective long-term, meaning that, we could punish or, send to timeout, or we solve the situation in the moment, but what is it doing long-term? Is it really helping the child develop a sense of self-esteem long-term? And so that to me is very important. And does it teach, it's teaching valuable social, emotional life skills? And this is when I do positive discipline workshops, we always have this exercise at the beginning where we do these 2 lists, where we list all of the kind of the issues, what is going on. They're not listening. They're not, getting out of the house on time. They're talking back, all of these issues that I promise you are universal, because I've done this many times and it's always the same. And then we do this other list where we kind of fast forward, maybe 18, 20 years down the road. And when you see that child, whether you were the teacher or you're the parent, what are the life skills that you are so happy to see in them, right? That they're curious, that they're kind, that they're generous, and all of this. And so those are those social, emotional life skills that we want to help them acquire through being respectful and positive discipline. Now, also, and lastly is positive discipline invites children to find solutions, because they are extremely capable when given the opportunity. And I've seen this, firsthand in my own parenting and then in the classroom. When we take the time to ask children, well, what should we do about it? How should we, do this differently next time? They come up with amazing solutions. So as long as they are safe and kind, please, go along with their solutions, because they're very creative and they're very capable. So invite them in to find solution. You are not alone in this, right? Take them in. This is collaborative work. Family life is collaborative work. And we need to include our children in finding solutions. So that is positive discipline. And here I have a quote from Jane Nelson, who is the author of all the positive discipline books, which again, I highly recommend. But I love this quote because she asks us, where did we ever get the crazy idea that in order to make children do better, first, we must make them feel worse, right? And I think that is the outdated notion of what discipline is. And here I'm inviting you to see it a bit differently. Okay, so now let's shift gears and talk about creating routines, because I know that this is something that as parents, we kind of all get stuck in of there's, these things that we do every day and it is the same thing. Like, why does it have to be so complicated to get out the door every day and be on time and, be punctual so that we get our full work cycle at school? And I know for me as a teacher, it was a bit annoying and frustrating to have children come in late because they've kind of missed the rhythm and all of this. And so as parents, we want to be able to to help them to be successful that way. And these are lifelong life skills that we need, right? Is to be respectful of other people's time. So to create routines using positive discipline, and this I will have to say is one of my favorite, because I actually, when I discovered it when my children were young and I was just being trained, it was very helpful because I had a young son who really had a hard time getting up in the morning and getting out the door on time. And it was extremely frustrating for me because I needed to be at work on time. And it ended up being very, unpleasant, where we would get upset with each other and, start the day in a bad mood. And so here, what we do here with positive discipline is, first, we're going to really talk about it together and invite solutions from the child. So this is really this idea of stating the problem, right? I have noticed that in the morning, we all know what we need to do, yet it's always a mess. And I always need to remind you to brush your teeth and put on your socks and get your book. So I think that we should maybe find a way that we could maybe create a routine so that you can be in charge and you know what to do. Right. So this is about brainstorming together and really brainstorming all of the things that need to be done, and be okay with your child saying, I need to cuddle with the dog for 5 minutes, or whatever, right? It's like everything that they feel they need to do before getting out the door. And I'm just using getting out the door as one example, but this can be used for maybe a bedtime routine, or end of the day cleanup, or whatever. The only thing that I will say is to try it out with just one at first, right? I don't want you to have routine charts all over the house. Just, focus on helping the child with the one that is the most difficult, so that they can understand this sense of order and being in charge, right? So we brainstorm all of the things that need to get done. We offer help. How can I help? Like, is there something that would be helpful that I do in the morning to help you? And here I will say a little parentheses for parents. I like to, at least for me, to get up earlier so that I am completely prepared, so that my morning routine is completely done, so that when my child is needing my assistance, I am available, as opposed to trying to do 1,000 things at the same time, right? So this is about planning ahead. So maybe it means, prepping some of the lunch the night before, getting the clothes out the night before, things like that. So this is all part of that brainstorming session. Then it's really about being creative in how you're going to make this routine chart. For younger children, I really like to take photos of them doing these actions. You could also draw them. For my son, he was already old enough. He wrote them out on little Post-it notes, and he would actually change the order every once in a while, which didn't really matter to me because it was the end goal that was important. It was being in the car, fully dressed, clean, well-fed, in a good mood. And that was the most important, right? So if he put his socks on before brushing his teeth, it didn't matter to me. That was his prerogative. So be open, and then ultimately it's really about letting the routine be in charge, right? It's now the routine is in charge. You do not need to remind and nag and so forth, right? This is really important. So I hope that is helpful for routines. Now, I am not sure about time. I still have a few slides that I want to go through, and I hope that is okay. One of the next things that I wanted to talk about is this notion of family meetings. And family meetings is really delightful to start as early as you can. And this is really the idea of coming together as a community and just planning the week. I like to do them Sunday night. Now that I'm an empty nester, I just do it with myself. I look at my week. What are my appointments? Where do I need to go? If, anything that I need to do, and things like that, and make sure that my week is prepared. So family meetings, though, in the positive discipline mindset, we have a real kind of order of things to do, and we sit together. We try to do it, every week at the same time. Some families can do it every day. Some families do it once a month. It really is up to you, but it's a great way to come together as a community and solve some of the issues that are going on. So we always start with compliments and appreciation. Thank you. That's great for you to be on time. I really appreciate how you emptied the dishwasher last night without me reminding you, whatever. It just makes it a very positive way of starting. Then we get into what needs to be planned, right? Is there a family occasion coming up, a family dinner, a family trip, a birthday party, and we plan something positive. Then we have an agenda and we look at what is on the agenda. And the agenda is used throughout the week when there is a problem going on, right? When there's maybe sibling rivalry going on, or some dirty clothes that are left in the corridor all the time. We just put those on the agenda. Those are things that we are going to talk about at the family meeting and find a solution. And we always stay in curiosity. We have curiosity questions. We're inviting cooperation, and we're avoiding, as the adult, to give orders. We're really accepting their solutions, right? And that is a very quick, brief overview of family meetings, but I encourage you to, either contact me if you want to know more, or look in the positive discipline books. But it is a beautiful tool to really, create those lifelong healthy connections and relationships that you have with your children. Now, I will just talk briefly about to recover. How do we recover from our mistakes? Because we're humans. We make mistakes, right? And mistakes are good. This is how we learn. Mistakes are always an opportunity to learn. So there are five ways that we kind of a process to recover from our mistakes. So first of all, we want to recognize, right? We recognize that we've made a mistake. I made a mistake. And that's okay. It can be, you raised your voice, you threw something. I don't know. There's all sorts of things where at one point we go, oh my gosh, that's not who I want to be. So we just recognize it. Then we take responsibility for it, right? I yelled. That's it. I made a mistake. I yelled. Then we reconcile. I'm sorry for yelling, right? And this is, for me, it's really important to get in the mindset that it is not only okay, but it is important to apologize when we have made a mistake to a child. It is not because it is a child that is younger than you that you can dismiss it and move on. This is, you are modeling. Remember our exercise? We need to model what it is to be a good human being and interact properly. So we reconcile. Then we reconnect. I'm ready to listen to what you had to say. And you could also offer a hug. Hugs go for a long way. And I know sometimes that might seem like, counterintuitive because you're upset and everything, but it really helps both of you to calm down, to reconnect. So a hug is always a great offering to reconnect. And then we resolve the situation, right? I need your help to find a solution to this situation so I don't make this mistake again. Okay, so that is really about recovering from our mistakes. And lastly, I want to share another quote with you. That Montessori has so many amazing quotes. And we must help the child to act for himself, will for himself, think for himself. This is the art of those who aspire to serve the spirit. And I think as parents, that is the job description that we have been given, is to serve the spirit of our children. So this is a very important task. And then here I just had one about encouragement, because earlier I said to avoid, praise and rewards. And so what do you replace that with? Well, you replace it with encouragement. And encouragement there is the word courage in encouragement, right? And courage comes from the Latin word cor, which means heart. And courage is really, for me, the language of love, right? It is that example of the hero of really somebody who just shows up properly and well, right? Somebody who's going to jump into a frozen lake to save a stranger, and people will ask them afterwards, "Oh my gosh, why did you do that?" "I don't know, I just did." That is the best of humanity. And so encouragement is helping our children be their best selves. That is what encouragement is really about guiding them to be their best version. Right. And Rudolf Dreikes here reminds us that a child needs encouragement like a plant needs water.